way I do it is that one there I can see is black, yellow, black, white. Then that means then I'll just make a note of that and go and look it up afterwards. But and there's red-tailed bumblebee and there's other things as well. So you can. Right. Anyway, let's start. I'm Patrick. We've heard a lot from Brian this morning. I'm the other half of the Barker Boys, and in AHDB capacity, I do live and work here too. I do generally most of the boring stuff in the office. I do all the paper and the money and all that kind of stuff, and then come in as harvest help. But Brian and I do the conservation. But what I've been able to do since we've been in various schemes is focus a lot more on recording and demonstrating the benefits and the negatives of these type of all the options that we're doing. So we were in an HLS scheme for 10 years, and that expired. What are we now? 1918 in the end of January 2017. I said the wrong date on the previous group, didn't I?
No, I wasn't listening, sorry.
So our HLS scheme expired the end of January 2017. We went 11 months without a scheme, and then on the speckled wood butterfly just coming through, on about the 20th of April 2018, we received our 1st of January start paperwork. So we kind of missed the start date of a new countryside stewardship higher tier scheme. So with a bit of messing around, we've finally kind of got up and running, and we're now halfway through the second year of a higher tier scheme. The HLS scheme was all geared around grey partridges and great crested newts. So on this farm we set about creating wildflower meadows, linking up all our habitats, the existing habitats on the farm with grass margins, with new hedges, and managing our hedges better to kind of create a whole ecosystem of the non-farmed area. And the kind of the whole principle is farming the farmed area to the best of our ability, pushing the yields as hard as we could, but then the 5% that we had out of production in HLS, which has now risen to almost up to 10% in the new scheme, we're looking to push that all as hard as we possibly can with an actual yield of wildlife, and that's kind of across the whole spectrum of the farmland ecology. So it's species of trees, bushes, grasses, it's dragonflies, it's all the insects, it's farmland birds, it's mammals, and it's kind of building one big ecosystem around our farmed area. The countryside stewardship scheme has really kind of just taken the farmland wildlife onto the next level. Everything we set up in HLS, we're now kind of really expanding on. And just to put it into context a little bit, we've got 7.3 hectares of nectar flower mix, 8.1 hectares of wild bird seed mix, and 1.5 hectares of this, which is autumn sown bumblebird mix. And actually what we have in that is real variety, because we've got spring sown wild bird seed mixes, we've got autumn sown nectar flower mixes, and then this is an autumn established bumblebird mix. But what we're doing is we're kind of bridging the gap between the wild bird seed mix and the nectar flower mix, so we're providing variety. And in a spring that's been as dry as this one, our nectar flower mixes are good and bad. Some are good, some are bad, but what we're doing is we're kind of making up for that with this autumn sown bumblebird mix. So maybe in another year we might have a real difficult time establishing wild bird mixes, when actually this maybe might just kind of cover that difference as well. So it's a kind of bit of a scattergun approach, but making sure we've got the pollinating insect habitat and we've got the farmland bird food source that we're looking for through all these options. So we're trying to create this whole ecosystem over the whole of the farm. I'm going to stumble a little bit because I'm trying to remember what I said to the last group to try and keep it all in order. But what these areas do is, because they're alongside our arable area, we're kind of hitting all the principles of the integrated pest management as well. And IPM is something that the AHDB are pushing quite hard. So it's looking at the benefits that we can provide for all our pollinating insects, and kind of getting nature working for us before we start looking at a can or some of the other interventions that we do as farmers. Then, when the Health and Harmony consultation was published, we actually kind of felt a little bit smug, because we've kind of realised that we've been doing public money for public goods probably for 10 or 12 years now. We felt at the beginning of our HLS scheme that if we were taking public money, we were taking European money for agri-environment schemes, that we wanted to be able to demonstrate actually where that money was going. And we did an awful lot of visits with a lot of groups, general public groups, so history groups, general conservation groups, the branches of the Wildlife Trust, the WI, all those kind of groups. So we're always really keen to show them that, you know, these options that are really delivering, it's public money. So public money for public goods is something that we've kind of always had in our mind, just maybe not in the format that we're going to have forced upon us in the future. So that meant that in order to demonstrate it, we started recording, and even as far back as 2006, 2007, we started recording. We joined the GWCT's Partridge Count scheme, so we've been recording our grey partridge and red-legged partridge sightings from that point. We also were involved then, we started in the BTO Burl Atlas and the Suffolk Hedgerow Survey, And from then, over the past 12 years, we've actually now contributed data to well over 30 different projects. So all the data that we're recording ourselves or inviting people onto the farm to record, we're feeding that information back out. So we're starting to build a real picture of all the benefits of the schemes and what doesn't work as well. Because actually it's easy to stand here and say everything is wonderful, but we actually learn more from the things that don't go well. And having, like I said before, covering our bases is something that we've kind of learned from having real lousy wild bird seed mixes in previous years, which haven't really worked very well. So for us now, we're recording literally everything we see on the farm. From big species to small species, all my kind of tatty old notebooks and random recordings, we kind of looked at that, and as we went into the new scheme, we kind of felt maybe that probably wasn't enough. So what we were able to do is we invited Hedley Wright, who I'm sure a lot of people will know, who's just retired as agronomist with Procam, who's a really keen photographer, and he comes out and just takes photos on the farm. But whilst he's doing that, he records everything he sees, and that has progressed on to he's done some quite detailed dragonfly surveys over all our ponds as well. So we've got more, just by inviting someone on, we've got a whole other range of data that we're receiving, and we're able to demonstrate again what works and what doesn't. I think the dragonfly data that we're recording at the moment will be really useful come the next round of schemes when we start looking at the work we need to do to ponds. And dragonflies is a really good indicator species of the health of ponds and the cleanliness of the water. We'll use the lack of dragonflies to demonstrate ponds that actually need capital funding, if that's an option that's available in the future. We've also got great crested newts expanding around the village into the ponds that we've restored through HLS Capital Works. So as a real key target species, it's something that's really fussy about clean water. We've got great crested newts demonstrating the work that we've done as well. And the ponds that don't have great crested newts are ones that we'll look at hopefully targeting in the future, because we can demonstrate the benefits of what does work. The areas of wild bird seed mix and the areas of autumn sown bumblebird mix are also added in with some supplement feeding as well. So we're doing supplementary feeding as part of the new scheme. And over the course of the year, we're feeding 4 tonnes of seed, in 3 tonnes every winter and another tonne every summer. The autumn seed mixes we're putting down, it's 25 kilos a week of mix and wheat, and we've seen massive increases in the number of yellowhammers feeding. And the way I monitor that is by ringing. We've now ringed over 2,000 yellowhammers on this farm since we've been ringing in about 10 years, and we're getting really good numbers of first year fledglings getting through the winter, so we're able to demonstrate that population is really benefiting from all these measures that are put in place. When we're looking at setting up the scheme and looking at everything we do, we kind of took on the principles of providing the big three, and the big three for us is an all year round food supply, it's safe nesting and brood rearing habitat, and it's protection, and that's protection from predators, protection from people, protection from the weather, and kind of getting everything in one big system kind of just means that we're kind of hitting all our target species, and hopefully we're seeing real benefits with that. Grey partridges, I said, were our target species with HLS, and areas like this are perfect for grey partridges, and the area that we're trampling down hopefully will become a really good drying out area for if it ever rains. We started off with maybe 2, 3, 4 pairs of grey partridges, and at the end of 10 years we hadn't really increased that much. And we were a little bit concerned that possibly, we weren't sure what was going wrong. No one shoots them, there's none released here, so we're literally just trying to kind of work a population up from not a lot. By last summer we had a perfect storm of a very warm summer, very good insect summer, and by last year we probably got up to about 10 pairs of grey partridges, and that had increased very quickly. So just as our wildflower meadows and areas like this are starting to really mature, or we were starting to get them right, we're getting that grey partridge habitat right. In August last year, we actually then went around the farm, we counted about 80 individual grey partridges, most of them fledglings from the year, and there was one covey of 44 on the 31st or 30th of August when we went round. So I think with patience, and that's something that the policymakers don't always appreciate, these are long-term measures, and 10 years was a long time for an HLS scheme, but we're now starting to see the benefits of those 10 years now. Whereas they seem to want everything, you put this in the ground, you'll see instant benefits. It doesn't really work like that, but we've now got a scheme in place where we can support a far increased number of grey partridges. And if we get our habitat right for grey partridges, then we know there's many other species that will benefit as well. Since we've had mixes like this in and our herbage grass seed crop on the other side, barn owls are now breeding in a box between the two woods, and there's never been barn owls up at this end of the farm before. So once you get these habitats right, all the other kind of target species will benefit as a result as well. The final thing I'm just going to say is this is Oakbank autumn sown bumblebird mix. and it had 50 kg of N on it in the sometime in the winter. I can't remember when it was exactly, but just take a bit of time just to look at it in detail, look at the insect life. In terms of what the public want from farming, you know, we've got the crops that provide food, but we're also delivering on biodiversity as well. And whilst the scheme is onerous in terms of record keeping, it's not onerous in terms of detail and in terms of knowledge. All you have to do is get these right and take a picture of it, put it on a bit of paper, and when the inspector comes around, this is where it was, this is what we've done. You know, so we don't need real detailed technical knowledge. We just need to be a bit thorough and a bit efficient. And the same way we keep records, spray records, we just need to be keeping wildlife records and establishment records for areas like this as well. When we've had consultation, one of the meetings we had with the DEFRA officials, they've identified that the money element is putting people off. They've said that out loud, and it's something they're addressing as well. You know, I can't stand here and say yes, all the money will all be fine. We're still waiting for money, just the same as everyone else is, but we take the view that it'll come at some point. It will come at some point. But for us, you know, it's about delivering as well, and we can see that the species we're aiming for are really delivering with mixes like this. So David Whiting's here. David is the senior agronomy specialist at Natural England, and David's going to do the second half.
Thank you, Patrick. That's fantastic. Up until last year, when I changed roles to a national arable agronomy role, and my role now is to try and support farmers and colleagues to deliver more of this sort of habitat here. In terms of it, we're trying to change everything in Natural England. DEFRA is now looking at conservation schemes as being more outcome focused, and there's an odd farmer here or two that are involved with a payment by results pilot here today, who are looking at a very outcome focused way of getting paid for environmental outcomes. At the moment, Patrick and Brian, if they deliver a fantastic autumn zone bumblebird mix like this, which I think we all agree looks amazing, it ticks the box for everyone. If every sort of option like this looked like this on every farm, we wouldn't have a need for payment by results as a pilot. Sorry. But they don't, because at the moment Brian and Patrick, they can just drill it and ignore it, and it can deliver nothing, but they still get paid with payment by results in the future, which is a potential future tranche of the future environmental land management scheme, which is coming over the horizon for all of us farmers. My father's in HLS at the moment, and he's asking me all the time, what's happening with elm, what's happening in 2024? There is going to be, hopefully, or perhaps they'll delay it and we can just carry on with BPS and agri-environment, there's going to be potentially a new farming support system for all of you, all of us, to think about. And this is going to be one of those elements. Patrick and my father, we've all sort of been, there's quite a few farmers here in agri-environment schemes, and we've all not been paid when we wanted to, and there's been problems with conservation schemes, which I completely empathise with all of you over. We still haven't been paid our HLS at home. But this is preparing Brian and Patrick for elm. They're upskilling now, they're learning, applying new knowledge that we're learning all the time through payment by results pilots and other research to work out how do I deliver a 10-tonne of crop per hectare crop of winter bird food. And this is what Brian and Patrick have really upped their game in going from HLS to higher tier. You've significantly increased your area of in-field options, haven't you? And it's not just because they're tree huggers like me. I'm a conservationist who's an agronomist and a farmer's son. But they've done their sums. The finances stack up for certain options. We unashamedly at home in our HLS agreement cherry picked the options that we thought would work for our system. We've taken awkward field corners out, which are marginal. They yield a tonne a hectare or more or less because of our rabbits that we keep on encouraging with other things. And we get drought. Last year, the drought effect of large oak trees on our farm and hedgerows really impacted on the first 10-20 metres of yield along our headlands. And so we've taken out 15% of our land at home, of 400 acres. We're a small farm at Thrandeston, and we put it all into high value, what I see high value and high payment options. I'm not ashamed to say that. And this pays £550 per hectare. They get BPS payment on top. Some of the options in countryside Stewardshire are even higher. Winter bird food is £640 per hectare. I know it's not all profit. You have establishment costs and management costs. But compared to what some of our yields were, and we love conservation and it fits in with shoots, it gives you another sort of potential diversification in terms of financial sort of element. You're guaranteed 5 years of payments, and that can be quite good for some farmers. You're guaranteed that money. We've used the remaining field areas that are nicely square shaped now, so we can actually farm them better. We've focused our inputs, our agronomy on that. Our average yields are going up because we've taken our marginal land out. By reducing our workload, we've also been able to reducing our cropped area. We've taken, like I say, 15% out. My father, who is 71 this year, and he is showing no signs of retiring. He's doing it all on his own with one seasonal harvest worker who does his spraying for him a lot of the time. And he's now been able to spread his workload from all autumn cultivation to a bit of spring fallows. We've got 12 hectares of fallows. Let's help him spread our labour. So there's benefits there. We got sick to death with Lee wraps and recording, spray recording, worrying about whether we can use this product within 5 metres or however many metres of a ditch containing water. So we've put 6 metre buffers around ours. This is not for everyone, but this is our reasoning for why I try and sell these schemes to the likes of Brian and Patrick. I'm passionate about pollinators, so we all know the value of pollinators for farming. There's 30% of our crops rely on pollinators like these little big boys here. And we have 1,500 species of insect that pollinate. Some of them we worry about, like pollen beetle and things like that. But there's 20 odd species of bumblebee. There's one honeybee, but there's hundreds and hundreds of species of solitary bees and wasps, and they're the ones that are really important, as well as the honeybee. And this is going to help drive that. If we can get farmers in Elm in the future all doing a little bit of this, I'm not saying 10% of your farm. If everyone did about 3% of their farm into this sort of habitat, we can really make massive changes, and integrated pest management is part of this. All of the insects that are going to use this are going to potentially go out there and feed on some of those aphids and other things. Beetle banks, we know, tussocky grass, like in the base of that hedge there, or a beetle bank across the field, supports ground beetles, which eat slugs. Song thrushes, hedgehogs, they eat slugs. And there's lots of insects here will also be doing a good job for you. Yes, ladybird larvae, hoverfly larvae, they all come in 2 or 3 weeks after your aphids and other bugs are doing some damage, but they eventually catch up and start helping you. So in Elm, there may be in the future with new regulations, I know we've been told that red tape will disappear post-Brexit if we do leave, but I do know that that's not going to be the case, and that it could be that you'll just have new red tape to follow, and there may well be a new soil health regulation. Soil health is very important, but integrated pest management is going to be quite a central part of regulatory sort of framework going forward. And if I was a farmer going forward, I'd be trying to use getting paid for things like this to help deliver your integrated pest management sort of compliance. That's what I would be doing going forward. And just going back to payment by results, if I'm allowed to just speak about that, we have an arable pilot in Norfolk and Suffolk where there's Paul here who's involved, and we're paying farmers to deliver winter bird food and pollen and nectar mixes, and they get paid more or less according to performance. And on that, all of our farmers, they have no rules to follow. So Patrick at the moment has to follow rules. You cannot do this, or you can do this. In payment by results, there's no rules. The farmer is simply given an agronomy note and given recommended advice on how to deliver a 10 tonne a hectare crop of winter bird food. And the likes of Paul, they're performing brilliantly. The payment for winter bird food in the pilot is £842 per hectare compared to the top payment, compared to £640 in CS, and my father in HLS gets £475. And we've set them a challenge to try and up their performance, because a lot of plots are variable in performance in existing schemes for a variety of reasons, drought being one of them, lack of water. But they've upped their game, and in the future environmental land management scheme, it is going to be about outcomes focus. We don't know what the devil is in that detail. We really don't know what DEFRA and Natural England, who I work for, are going to be asking you guys to deliver. But performance related sort of payments isn't something unusual. You guys, you get paid more if you deliver 10 tonnes of wheat compared to A, and I think you have the skills, the agronomists have the skills, the advisors, you all have the skills to start delivering better plots like this. Patrick and Brian, I've nailed it here, but they're not always like this. Last year was our worst ever winter bird food plots, and we know why. We had about 10 millimetres of rain between end of April and July. All of our winter bird food plots, the seed sat there, was drilled in May, early June, and didn't germinate until the first week of August. A lot of that seed was then blind because it didn't have any moisture. So in the future, we're going to give you more tools, more freedom to decide what's best for you. So it might be for some farms, autumn sown winter bird food mixes are better than spring sown, or a mix of both to cover your risks, because you want to get paid, don't you? And that's what Brian's done here with the mix of options. You're covering the ecological risk, aren't you, with a range of options, but you're also potentially getting yourself ready for Elm in the future, aren't you? That's all I was going to say for now. Is that okay?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the problem with how things have gone. In like we've all took the bad bits out of the field and put in HLS, which I've done just the same.
Yeah.
but they're very hard to manage, awkward shapes,
Absolutely.
and you can't get the potential like this out of it
No.
because you're starting with a bad area.
Certain arable. Well, this afternoon there'll be an opportunity to go around and talk about some of this at the actual plots, more on the environmental agronomy, which is really my area of expertise, where I can pick your brains as well. Big plots are easier to manage. It's untrue that if you think that conservation options are going to be low input, there are certain options in conservation, like winter bird food, are higher input but lower input than your cropping, and you can't get a decent winter bird food plot, especially kale based mixes, without some nitrogen, especially in the first and the second year. But shape, size of plots, small is terrible. It's a pain in the arse.
I mean, I'm coming to the end of a 10-year HLS, and I've got little triangles and bits, so it seemed a good idea at the time, but I can't achieve this sort of thing because it's just not practical.
Sometimes wildflower mixes don't like a lot of fertility.
No, that's
so
right.
Wildflower mixes are a good option in those poor areas.
Absolutely.
Patrick, this is absolutely fantastic. The only thing I'd say, David, is that going forward, you were just quite dismissive about payments, and I think, well, the payments are being hung up a little bit.
Definitely not dismissive of payments.
No, but I think if you want more farm, I've got 11% of my farm in agri-environment schemes. I think going forward with Elms, that is the number one thing. If you want people to take them up, we had the National Audit Office saying if they don't get taken up, farmers might not have that money in the future. We need to have a system that actually, if we sign a contract, let's honour it, and I think you'll have people flooding it.
In the consultations with DEFRA, that is something that
that's the number one issue.
They've heard it loud and clear.
I'm just making it loud.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Tony Pike sat in our farm office, and there was Ollie, there's a few people were here, and he said we 100% acknowledge that if we're entering with a financial transaction and we have the ability to penalise farmers for doing things wrong, the same has to be the same of us as well, and that's something that from the consultation we're taking back and we're going to feed back in. It has to be a two-way street. That's what he said, Jeremy. You were here, weren't you?
The level of payment needs to be high on the profit centre of the farm rotation. It needs to be equivalent to a first week. If you can do that, you'll get farmers to take it up.
I've done the income for gone calculations.
But it wants to be based against a first week gross margin.
I totally agree with you. I won't get bogged down. If you want to talk about how the income for gone calculations worked out, I've done them, and I can talk about that later, because there are some situations where we factor in the in-field yield, and when we know you're putting it on the field headland, so we're giving you a profit margin there. And other cases, we're not factoring your first wheat that's yielding perhaps 5 tonnes an acre. There's lots of elm work streams at the moment. I think we're all, as an industry, whether you're working in Natural England or as a farmer son like me, looking at it from outside of Natural England's rose-tinted spectacles, there's a lot of work streams going on, and there's a lot of consultation, and perhaps DEFRA getting bogged down by that. I'm on an elm agronomy focus group at the moment, and George Eustace, who was there at the time, no longer, the first thing he said to us, this is our focus, is we've got to have farmers paid on time. Now, I wasn't happy when the RPA took the scheme over from Natural England, because I felt Natural England had been kicked in the short and curlies for things outside of our control, because we've done a pretty good job over the years until we had a new computer system which you all use for your BPS play.
But Dale, the thing I'd say is this is such a good news story for farmers. This is brilliant PR for farmers, and it's something that I think you find loads of farmers will want to get on board, as long as we've got a system that's fit for purpose. And I think there's no bad messages about it.
No. But the DEFRA and the ministers are fully aware payments need to be made on time. Now, going back to the RPA, their business is paying. This isn't environmental advice. If you want to come to find out how to manage this slightly better, then you need to talk to FWAG or say Natural England, someone like me. But they pay money, they get judged on paying. They're struggling a bit at the moment because they're taking over a legacy, but they will make sure you get paid, because that's how they're judged, that's their game. And the minister will not allow it to continue, because we won't have farmers coming into a scheme otherwise. We need to get paid regularly to cover our expenses. We have interest on working capital for all the seed and the cultivation costs, and you shouldn't be waiting 18 months to get paid that. It's not right, it's not fair, and you will leave. You won't come back in.
Okay, we're out of time here.
Yeah.